It's spelled traitor, not traitor, by Jack of all trades. Chapter 9. Things get spicy. Izuku waited patiently with a kind smile on his face, swivel chair turned towards the girl wearing Urarako's form and one leg crossed over the other, hands clasped on the higher knee. There was the obligated, flabbergasted sputtering phase to wait out before he could get down to business. What? Uraraka exclaimed, eyes blank with shock. Himiko-chan? You mean that cute girl from the Villains Alliance that took my blood? Of course. You know I could always recognize you no matter whose face you wore. And you've tried Uraraka on me before. Aw, all right. How'd you know it was me this time? Uraraka pouted. Elementary, my dear Hime-chan. Izuku smirked. Miss Uraraka shouldn't know my real name, and I don't know anyone else with a transformation quirk. Plus, you're the only person I know in this day and age that uses honorifics. He tapped the side of his nose. And one of Sensei's quirks gave me super smelling. As if I could ever forget your scent after all we've done together. Oh, pooh! Himiko, wearing Uraraka's form, poked her tongue out. My Izuku is too smart! I don't get to see you after you get Sensei's quirk, and dish us all, and the first thing you do once I find you is ruin my fun. I'm sure I can make it up to you. But first, how did you find me? Himiko giggled and leapt off the chair she had sat in, sauntering to sit on Izuku's desk with popped hips, making Uraraka's skirt sway back and forth. He rotated his chair to keep himself facing the volatile teen. The Villains Alliance heard UA was bringing in someone with a give-and-take quirk, so I did some more listening. She lay herself across the desk to stare up at Izuku upside down, with Uraraka's big, soulful brown eyes, bouncy hair splayed around her angel face. When I heard lovely Ochako talking about Midoriya Izuku-sama and his... Himiko drew a sharp breath through her teeth and moaned. Aching need... She giggled. To help people. I knew it was my dear Izuku, too clever by half, and got caught up in his own schemes. My Hime-chan is so smart. Izuku cooed, paging Uraraka's hair aside. But did she make sure she wouldn't get caught? Of course! Sweet Ochako-chan is out at the mall with her friends, and our tasty ex-leg-boy-kun talking about how they're gonna get his good leg-boy status back. So I pickpocketed her UA idea so I could sneaky to find my prince locked in the castle. And on your end, I'm sure my gallant prince made sure there's no bugging in the room, or you would have played along instead of outing me like a snitch and breaking your masterfully made modern Malinquitoast masquerade. So Cassius, like a cat stalking her prey. And does my princess still like rooting out succulent information for the Villains Alliance? Oh, I'm sure they'd want me to. Himiko pulled herself up to a sitting position, legs hanging on either side of the chair, all but sitting in Izuku's lap. She supported herself by placing both of her hands on the desk between her thighs and leaning forward, almost inviting Izuku to drop his gaze from her eyes. And Shigaraki-san would reward me handsomely. I'm sure we could work something out. Izuku chuckled, his voice dropping into a chocolatey bass as he unfolded his legs. After all, you were right. We haven't been together. At this, Izuku placed his hands on Himiko's waist and pulled her fully into straddling his hips. Since before I gained all, for one. It felt wrong, unfamiliar to Izuku. He was accustomed to Himiko's deceivingly lean muscles and thin pelvis. Uraraka's plush, full body pinned him down with weight he was unaccustomed to bearing. Himiko buried her nose in Izuku's hair inadvertently, or perhaps not, pressing Uraraka's breasts against Izuku's collar. And I bet you know how to use it just right, too. So, my Izuku, do you want this body? Himiko ground Uraraka's hips into Izuku's. My dear princess, have you forgotten? Izuku ran a thumb across Uraraka's pink cheek. I'll only ever want to have my Hime-chan. Himiko grinned lewdly and transformed, her clothes, skin, and hair melting away until Himiko Toga sat naked on top of Izuku, her messy golden buns tucked under his chin and her extra sharp canines nibbling on his neck. You never let me get kinky with it, do you, my Izuku? Himiko crooned, one hand threading its way around Izuku's skull. Oh, you want to get kinky? I'll show you kinky. Izuku whispered in Himiko's ear and began transforming using a quirk he had received but the day before he had been summoned to UA. I know what you like, Izuku rasped huskily. You were always so rambunctious after a day of training. You would like me raw, bruised, and bleeding, don't you, my princess? With all for one, I can be your wildest dreams at any moment. Himiko's blush grew redder and wider as she felt Izuku's flesh twist underneath her and watched his organs emerge from his chest cavity as he activated inside out. Oh, Izuku! Himiko moaned huskily as her hands ceased to guard through hair and instead squelched against vulnerable muscle tissue. I need you right now. Your wish is my command, my princess. Izuku ravaged Himiko with inside out, with duplication, with limbs both standard and tentacular, as Izuku and Nezuko, even as Ida and Bakugo, Shigaraki, and twice, and at one point he utilized a swath of quirks to make Himiko the center of attention of the entirety of the Villains Alliance, sporting a plethora of wounds they'd received over the years. They used the chair, the desk, the floor, and the walls, but Izuku suddenly kept their activities away from anything his patience would touch. He cleaned up as they went by splitting his attention between the mess they left and the mess in his arms. It was messy, wet, loud, and exhausting. Himiko was in heaven until Izuku literally fucked her brains out and she fell unconscious from a sensory overload and possible dehydration. And all the while, Izuku was cold inside. Izuku put on the mask of an attentive lover for Himiko, but it just was a chore, his price to buy Himiko's silence and her loyalty. It had been thus ever since the two had begun experimenting with each other in the Villains Alliance bar's back room in the throes of puberty. That was what triggered Sensei to gift Izuku his first quirk: sterility, to prevent any untoward developments from inhibiting either of the hormonal teens unfettered by the rules of society. Izuku had not lied before. He would only ever lie with Himiko, but not because he loved her, and she loved him, but because she had killed any semblance of the sanctity of sex and with it all but neutered his sex drive. He put out for her out of necessity, and nothing more. With Himiko out cold, Izuku took the opportunity to write up a little note on the paper of the pad he used to write on while talking with patients. Once written, he ripped it off the stack and folded into his pocket. Out of what may have been a need to keep a schedule, but was more probably a sense of petty ire, Izuku did not let Himiko bask in her afterglow. As soon as she had awakened, Izuku pushed Himiko to leave. Himiko extracted a promise from her favorite pastime to visit more often and adopted Uraraka's form once more before Izuku bustled her out of his office. Izuku stood in the doorway to Yue's hall and joined the pro hero at his door, watching Himiko wearing Uraraka's form strut down the hallway. Sure looks like you made her happy, Mr. Miracle Worker. The hero praised Izuku, turning to him. Instead of a response, he was presented with a slip of paper being discreetly pressed into his hand before the VIP he was guarding ducked back into the office. With his enhanced hearing, Izuku heard the hero unfolding the paper from the other side of the door and practically read along in his mind's eye. Follow that, Uraraka. I've spoken to Uraraka before, and today she was acting out of character. She was prying for the same information that Eraserhead, Nezu, and Tsukauchi wanted, using context that she should not have. I believe she is an imposter, probably from the Villains Alliance. There was a flurry of activity on the other side of the wall. The pro hero had the sense not to desert his post, and called in a squad of other teachers and preemptively sent another to tail the false Uraraka. All the while, Izuku cleared a space in the middle of the room in the intervening space to the door, rolled his chair to the newly vacant area, and sat, awaiting the inevitable hero interrogation in a pose he had learned from the sparse anime's Sensei had allowed him. One leg resting on the other, elbows on the armrests of the chair, and hands tented before his chin. He once again wished he had invested in some glasses so that he could have placed them low on his nose to peer over as they reflected the white light from above. The hero's response time was admirable. After a mere minute, the squad had taken off down the hall, and moments later, Izuku detected the distinctive click-clack of a dog walking on linoleum, though in a bipedal cadence rather than the usual quadrupedal beat. It was accompanied by heavy dragging boots stomping along in a much longer stride. Eraserhead was polite enough to push the door open, despite any other more gung-ho hero's instinct to simply kick it down. His expression simply screamed that he was already tired of dealing with a nuisance, despite the near deadpan it was locked into. You really do kick up a fuss wherever you go, don't you? I was relatively anonymous until UA took an interest in me. It was only a matter of time before someone investigated. Contrary to the popular saying, not all publicity is good publicity. Mouthy too. No, Aizawa, Nezu admonished, trotting under the larger teacher's legs with a perpetual smile on his face. Midori does have a good point. We haven't exactly made the fact that we've all but abducted a suspicious individual and detained him in secret. With a stream of common citizens that have visited Mr. Midori today, we should have expected something like this. We did, Aizawa reminded the principal. Didn't think it'd be this quick, though. Didn't get the safety measures set up in time. He leaned his head back, a subtle shade of aggravation passing over his dead inside poker face. I told you we should have put them up immediately. Well, it's too late to do anything, Aizawa. I'm sure you two enjoy your bickering, Izuku cut in. But I'm sure you'd like me to debrief you? No. Aizawa flopped into a beanbag chair. We're here to make sure nothing happens to you while we wait for Detective Tsukuchi to get here. You can tell your story to him. Oh, good. I do like the good detective. Izuku smiled. He's straight and to the point. Very refreshing in my line of work. Oh? Nezu lifted an eyebrow. The miraculous Midori is not the perfect therapist with no complications. I can see where you might get that idea. Izuku chuckled, leaning back in his chair. Honestly, most of the UA heroics students have been some of the easiest people I've worked with. The common patients don't like admitting their problems or have trouble articulating what it is that they'd like to improve, and most talk in circles to avoid the issue. Especially the adults, who are not expecting a high school-age young man to be their consultant. He sighed contemplatively. I'd file for an official change to exclusive pediatric care, but then I would be barred from helping those out of my specified field. Can't have that, can we? You're very forthcoming about this, Nezu commented, angling for the one chair in the room. I wouldn't sit on that. Izuku put his hand out to block Nezu's advance. The potential imposter sat on that chair might be some evidence on it, and I like to be as forthcoming as I can be. Izuku spread his arms. I'm like a set of public records. I'm an open book for anyone to read, but the information about my clients has been carefully redacted. But for this, I think I can reveal some harmless details. Well, give us the juicy scoop, as the kids say nowadays. Aizawa grunted. Spill the tea or whatever. The Uraraka I talked to tonight went right for the chair as soon as she walked in and ignored the plushies, which was the first clue that she was not who she seemed. Every UA student I've talked to had grabbed a stuffed animal as soon as they walked in and threw themselves into a beanbag chair. I think it's a subconscious cry for stress relief and comfort. Interesting theory. Nezu smiled, looking for all the world like another plush animal nestled in the depths of a beanbag. Aizawa just juggled darkly. Hope I'm not interrupting anything important. A new voice announced as Tsukuchi shouldered his way into the room, followed by the emaciated form of All Might. Not at all. It's best if you get right to it, Detective. Midori has already revealed one clue as to how he came to his conclusion, if you would like to repeat. Nezu nodded. First, don't sit in the chair. He pointed to the chair that Yagi had already started reaching for. The suspect went right for it and sat, ignoring the plush toys, which is indirectly contrary to Uraraka's past behavior, as well as the trend in UA students to grab a stuffed animal and settle themselves in a beanbag chair. I see. We will need to confiscate the chair, scan it for DNA. Please do. The suspect has been the first person to use it since I got here. Aizawa snorted, even as he was slowly being consumed by the bag he had sunk into. Then she called me something similar to my name, yet not quite right. She called me Midoriya-san, if that name means anything to you. The use of honorifics was another tip-off that something was wrong.
Society has largely forgotten its manners in recent years.
All Might groaned, even as he abandoned all decorum to spread himself over a beanbag for maximum comfort. After the suspect started asking questions, I had to start distracting and humoring her while I wrote the letter I gave to the hero at my door on my pad of paper. When it became clear she was getting all that she could from me already, she left, which is when I gave the note to the heroes. What sort of questions did the suspected impersonator ask? Most of them centered around All for One. She mentioned having heard that I was brought in because Give and Take resembles that quirk. She insinuated that the Villains Alliance would be interested in me, especially if I was this Midoriya-san person. At that point, we started dancing around the other's questions before she left. The hero at your door mentioned that Uraraka left in a very upbeat mood. Do you have any idea why that might be? My best guess is that she got something that she wanted. If it was one of my answers, I can only imagine what she'll do with that information. That is troubling. Is there anything else you could tell me about the imposter? Izuku pinched his bottom lip between two fingers before looking back up. Oh yes, he tapped the side of his nose. I have a fairly sensitive nose. I picked up the scent of copper on her. I think she might have smelled like blood. That caused the detective and heroes to exchange knowing looks. Detective Tsukaruchi was the first to get up. Thank you for this information, Mr. Midori. I think with this information we could tack down the suspect. You may want to get some rest early. I think I would like that. Izuku nodded. Eraserhead had fallen asleep entombed in the beanbag chair, so instead All Might was Izuku's escort for the night. The teen played up the stress a person should have felt from all this excitement, occasionally taking a stutter step and running his hand along walls and tables he passed near to make sure the world was oriented correctly. Yagi glanced worriedly at the young man before he kicked up a conversation to alleviate the awkward silence.
How are you holding up, young Midori? I know it's been a stressful few days for you.
I'm about as well as can be expected. Izuku sighed tiredly. First I moved to a new place, then get more exercise than I've ever gotten before in a single sitting one day, and work out my quirk to its limits the next. And now I have to deal with this villain nonsense. I'm wearing a bit thin, to be honest. He subtly manipulated flesh mass to give his eyes bags as he directed a wan smile at the former number one hero. But if it's all in the name of helping people, I'll endure it all. Yagi took in Zuko's frame, thin, stooped, and tired. He grimaced regretfully.
Hopefully you won't have to endure much more. The Villains Alliance may have made a grave mistake here tonight. If we can find them, then they might be able to put this whole...
All Might waved it uncertainly.
witch hunt business behind us and you can get back to your work.
Izuku smiled at All Might as they reached his dorm. He bid the hero good night and turned into his room. He shuffled to the bed that UA provided and sat on the edge of it, resting his elbows on his knees and putting his head in his hands. On the outside, it seemed like he was processing the whirlwind that his life had become. On the inside, it wasn't too different, but it was mostly self-recrimination. He had just put the linchpin of his entire secret life in Himiko's hands. What the heck had he been thinking? Toga was a wild card at best, even if she was biased in Izuku's favor. He was going to be forced to resolve this situation itself, and he knew that it would be better to do it in full view of both the villains and the heroes, which was inevitably going to be very public. But first, Izuku needed information. To that end, Izuku activated one of the subtler body-altering quirks that he had. Sensei had called it Candyman, after an archaic folk horror story. The skin beneath Izuku's clothes changed from flesh to a teeming mess of skittering critters. To draw attention away from the floor, Izuku pulled out his phone and dialed up his mother, hoping that she remembered the code that they had come up with. "Hello?" Inko answered her phone.
Hey, Mom. There's been some stuff happening. I think I need to talk to my tutor.
There was a heavy silence before he got a response.
"Are you sure? I remember the two of you parted on less than friendly terms after you earned your certification."
Yeah, there's just a few tricks of the trade that I need to review with him. I'll probably see some of his other students while I'm out.
"Oh, Zuko, I'm sure you think it's necessary, but you know I'll worry about you, right?"
I know, Mom. I can't promise that it won't get ugly, but I'll play it safe. You do too, okay?
"Of course. I better start getting ready to have visitors then. I love you."
I love you too, Mom.
Izuku hung up. In the span of that short conversation, Izuku had started letting small streams of small mobile insects flow from under his pants and through the cracks in the walls and under the door to disseminate around the building. He laid himself down on the bed so that he could better coordinate the hundreds of disparate viewpoints. As the night passed, Izuku learned that a subtle hero had in fact watched Himiko transform and reverse pickpocketed Uraraka's UAID back to her as she was heading back into the campus, but had lost her in the crowd when she had transformed into a different form out of his sightline. The heroes were doing a systematic sweep in the direction that Himiko had been traveling and anticipated finding the villain's alliance within a week. In the process of learning this, one of Izuku's quirks had somehow ended up adopted by a hero student. Koda, he said his name was. Apparently, he could talk to animals. What a useful point of contact. That particular roach, nicknamed Rochi by his new mama, was placed in a small aquarium with some food. Izuku relinquished direct control over Rochi, who proceeded to happily gorge himself on Koda's offerings. Izuku then shifted his attention to another insect, this one well outside of Yue's bounds. Even so far away, it was still a part of his body, so he could still affect it. Flesh Mask morphed the bug into a copy of Zuko's form and made the copy mimic his pose. It was quick, hopefully quicker than the heroes would catch. Just a flicker on their screens. Izuku used Sensei's teleportation quirk to quickly swap places with the doppelganger. He found himself in an alley and abandoned Zuko's face while he was still hidden. Midoriya Izuku took stock of his surroundings, wearing his own skin for the first time in what felt like months. He consulted a very special bug that he had assigned to an important position almost 6 months ago and teleported to it before his hesitation could stop him. The alley was replaced with sterile walls and a one-way mirror overlooking a figure encased in quirk-suppressing restraints and strapped to a gurney. Just as he had told his mother. He had a few last tricks to extract from his sensei.